People age. We're all aging. It is a part of life. And many, many people are working longer, either because they love what they do or because they have no choice, because it's a financial reality for them. My next guest, Dan Pontefract, is someone who is focused on this area. He is an award-winning speaker. He's an author. He's a leadership and culture strategist. And his new book is called The Future of Work is Gray, the Untapped Value of Age in the Workplace. Dan joins us today from Victoria, BC. Hello there.
Hello, Bruce. Thanks for having me. Let's get right into the gray zone.
How self-serving are we? Two guys of a certain age talking about why it's so great to be older in the workplace. Tell me, other than your own ulterior motives, why did you write this book?
Well, first of all, thanks again. I do believe that I missed the boat on the age file. So I am a recovering human resources, people and culture leader from the corporate world and from academia. And so I, at this point of recording, am just about to turn double nickels, as we say in the age spectrum land. So I'll just be about 55. And it was a couple of years ago where I said, here I am in my 30s and 40s, working in organizations that is telecom or high tech or academia, and I never once paid attention to age. So if I'm the guy that was in charge of leadership development, culture, organizational behavior, and I have the remit for literally tens of thousands of people, and I'm not paying attention to it, I thought, okay, maybe it's time for mea culpa and I should do something about this because I'm not going to live forever. And maybe there's other ways in which I can help people who have made the same error as I have, Bruce.
Well, you capture the world that we're in very well in terms of what's going on, the challenges that we face as a country, as a civilization in terms of demographics. You use the phrase the age debt crisis, and you define it in this way: the organizational failure to plan for and value age, resulting in capacity loss and a weakened workforce. Why does this exist? I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think you summarize it eloquently. Why does this exist?
Well, to be crass, where leaders are morons. We have not.
Present company excluded.
We have not really thought about it. So I am part of that moronic cadre of leadership, as I mentioned. And so what we're not doing also is we're not seeing that the math is mathing. And what I mean by that is, to your point, this sort of demographic disruption, whether you live in Canada, the US, and North America, or our friends in Europe and Asia, are already ahead of this demographic change. And so it is coming. And so what I mean by it's coming is that I liken it to this metaphor where our demographic size, shape, used to be like a bell. If you think about a church bell, really, wide at the bottom, the base, and then it thins out as it gets to the top, to the apex. Well, we're shifting to what I call a light bulb. So we're moving from bell to bulb. So we're having less babies, and I'm not a pro-natalist. I'm just telling you the math.
Yep.
And even with immigration, as much as our total population in US, Canada is increasing, it's the average and the way that spectrum is shifting that nobody is talking about. So our average age in organizations is incrementally increasing, and we're going to have less young people to fill some of those roles, yet head in the sand, Bruce, head in the sand.
Well, the argument that some people would make is this is not a problem, because AI is going to take our jobs anyway. So
here we go.
We won't need people, young or old, because AI is going to do everything. It's going to be fine. Now, I would bet you have a counter argument to that.
Oh, and the sex robots. Let's not forget those, Bruce.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah. I think that'll be a thing too. Sure.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's get into it. So first of all, the various firms like Bain, McKinsey, the OECD consortia, right? They show to us that by 2030, 2031, we are going to have an economic loss of $5.4 trillion in OECD countries due to knowledge loss. That is not even considering what might be replaced with AI. So just the fact that, you know, good people who have learned things, whether they are young, middle age or older workers, and we're not capturing it, transferring it, and just the reticence that's going to happen thereafter, in and of itself, when you have Bain or McKinsey saying, hello, we have a problem on our hands, what are we doing? You know, that starts hopefully waking people up from their head in the sand syndrome. So there's that. But really, to your point, where we go with this sort of AI is going to replace us all mantra is a bit naive. And I'm not suggesting you're naive, Bruce, by the way. What I'm saying is that leaders who think that, oh, the best way to solve our EBITDA issues or profitability increase issues is to start replacing older and or younger workers with AI. That'll fix it all. That'll improve our profitability is as short-sighted as short-termism is on those that game the stock market in order to reap the benefits in the quarter. So it's the same type of thinking analogously if we were then to extend that out to sort of 5-10 years from now. Aren't we hollowing out the organization for what is supposed to be something that leaders are doing, which is the fiduciary responsibility for the long-term health of that org? Yeah. That's one of my issues.
And even if they don't replace us, there is a role for AI in terms of being a knowledge aggregator, because, you know, right now there are organizations who have what's called a second brain. So every single document ever produced in the history of the company is in a gated AI agent accessible to anyone at any time. So the knowledge will be super simple to access. What it sounds like you're talking about isn't so much knowledge. It's more like wisdom and thought and perspective, which is less simple to codify. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, there's two ways to answer that. First is organizations don't do a very good job, first and foremost, of capturing said wisdom and knowledge that they have on their hands today. So whether that is, you know, the relationship that salespeople might have with their customers, like what is Betty like on her anniversary? Like what is Jim up to with this golf score these days? And does Sandeep have 3 kids and what are their names? Like, why are we not capturing that? So the technical term is called CTA, cognitive task analyses. Are our organizations using AI to capture all that wisdom from our young, middle-aged, and older workers to then have in repositories? Not really. So wherever I go, whatever I've done investigation-wise, they're like, we're good. And then we start, what do we do, Bruce? We either don't hire or fire young, middle-aged, or older workers, and we're not allowing that, you know, newish LLM to sort of be complemented. So that's kind of problem number one. Problem number two, to your point about kind of digital twinning, et cetera, which is a fantastic idea. I've got my own digital twin, right? Like this is good stuff. But again, when the organization's senior leader or bean counter start thinking, wait a second, Bruce, digital twin, why don't we just have the digital the digital 1.0, the digital one? Why do we need the other one? And that's the problem, is that senior leaders who are, again, back to looking at the sort of fiscal responsibility, are looking at it only from numerical perspective and not the qualitative need where the nuance is needed with people who actually have human emotions and EQ, of which I hope forever that the LLMs and the AIs do not.
Our listeners are probably coming to this conversation from two perspectives. Many of them work in organizations, they're leaders in organizations, they have to think about this demographic shift that you're talking about. Many of them also are aging. In fact, they're all aging. Some of them just might not be aware of it yet, like you and I are. You have something called an age awareness assessment, which I took. Tell us about the purpose of this assessment in the book and how you would provide context on my score, because you know what it is.
So effectively, thank you, by the way, we have to start looking in the mirror. And so if you're, for example, young, you never think about when you're 50, 60, 70, 80. And certainly what I call the rivers these days are not thinking about living to 100. And so they're not planning for, not thinking about it, et cetera. And it's worse than ever from a cost of living perspective to save for said future. So from a longevity lens output, I really worry about our younger generations, our younger workers who have no idea how old they're going to live to, and B, how long they're going to have to work to fund said piece. So that to me is kind of one of the issues. But when you talk about this age assessment, we really do have to look in the mirror. So if you are middle age or older, what I call rocks or rubies, are you prepared for what might be the need to work? Now, we talk a lot, I've talked a lot about, written a lot about purpose, just as an example. So one of the things I got from some of the researchers and academics that I worked with in the lead up to this book and writing it was one connection point I never thought about, Bruce. And that is actually organizations have almost like a municipality fiduciary responsibility to employ workers in their middle age and older years. Because why? Because a sense of purpose and meaning actually prevents sort of that cognitive and physical disability or decay. And if the organizations are employing folks in these ways, then what it does is lessens the burden on our municipalities, provinces, state, the healthcare system, et cetera. So there's actually a government public policy potential play where organizations can co-align and say, you know what, a sense of purpose actually helps the long-term health of our populations.
I scored, what was it, age savvy on the assessment, which you say is a silver, not a gold, which is shocking to me that I've ever been in second place in anything. But tell me what I should take away from that assessment.
Well, first of all, you're well on the platform. You earned that silver.
Okay,
the top mark is age golden, as you might expect.
I'll do better when I do the quiz again. I'll do the quiz again and I'll do better. I'll study for it that next time.
Okay, fair enough. So again, it's just a reflection saying you're kind of 80-90% of the way there, and that's great. So the reflections on you, are you prepared? Is your organization talking in age positive ways? Are there things that you do that are age inclusive, which is allowing, again, almost a blindness to whether someone is young, middle age, or old? Bruce, you're my Uncle Bruce. You figured this out. That's good. Well done. But there are
when I look in the mirror, which I am happy to do, I just take the dimmer switch down to about half. That's the trick. Low lighting is the trick to optimizing what you look like in the mirror.
Well, I've just found ways in which to use, the zoom unblemish factor. I use that in
my
real
appearance.
Life. Yeah.
I take that slider all the way to the right every time.
But I do that IRL, so I walk around with just like blush kits, just make sure people are seeing some of the wrinkles, my friend. So we adapt. That's the point. So your age assessment score is fantastic, but there are probably invisible, hidden, little nuanced things that you still might want to think about, and that may be, hey, Bruce, are you ready to live to 90? And you probably will, given your fitness and the fact that you're still doing 10Ks and half marathons. Like, you're fantastic. But will you be ready for that sense of purpose, that intellectual curiosity? And I know you will, but that's the question listeners and readers or listeners and viewers might want to be thinking about.
Yeah. My dad retired at 76. He's 90 and just got back from 3 weeks, trekking around Europe. We talk about the demand side, right? The ageism at organizations can affect the demand side. What about the supply side? And I ask because I am at an age in which my cohort is considering, for those lucky enough to be in a financial situation to ask this question, they're considering whether they want to work. How do you address that part for those who do have the financial flexibility to choose yes or no?
For those that can choose, first and foremost, you got to ask yourself in the mirror, how much gardening and golf will fill your bucket?
And pickleball. Gardening, golf, and pickleball.
Sorry, yeah. Although pickleball is a noise complaint these days. But I digress, Bruce. I think like that, again, back to purpose and meaning. And so the existential Sartre type question is, have I become or am I becoming? And so if you think that you've become and you're done, I can almost assure you with the medical data from Yale, from the University of Toronto, et cetera, these great schools that have done research, longitudinal research studies on how well you can age mentally, physically, and emotionally, socially. I urge you to rethink the gardening and golf and pickleball strategy as to something that you think you're going to do on a full-time basis. And this notion of when you are in your Ruby era, and whatever year that is for you, maybe you're 50, 70, 80, to me it doesn't matter. Your father is a great example, it sounds. And that's his mind. My dad just turned 80 and he still sits on 3 boards and he still mentors and coaches people in England. He runs a jitsu Fridays. It's just amazing. Like, I'm so looking up to my dad these days in his 80s. It's that sense of wildness. Like, do I want to contribute and will I want to continue learning? And what you see is the flip side. The ones that have become the couch potatoes, the soul golfers, they haven't really expanded their mind. And then you see some of those physical cognitive decays that happen. I want you people to look in the mirror and say, what am I becoming? Not what have I become?
That's interesting. You write about self-limiting ageism. So what would you say older workers need to do to overcome some of the systemic issues that present in workplaces?
Bruce, there hasn't been a week since sort of news of this book kind of started percolating, I suppose, at the beginning of the year in 2026, where I'm not getting a DM or an email from somebody somewhere who's 50 plus. Dan, can you help me? I mean, I've applied to 21 positions and I'm not getting any callbacks. And the ages, factor right there is real. So what I basically say are three things. First, stop pretending to be 35. So those that are scrubbing their data, which is to scrub their birth years or scrub their roles when they were in the 90s or 2000 or 2010s, to kind of pretend that, well, their last gig, was 20 years ago, not 30 years ago, et cetera, you're being dishonest to yourself. And who, if you're 55, 65, 75, why would you want to be 35, 45? Like, that doesn't make sense. So just be you, first and foremost. And stop scrubbing your data and scrubbing your years. You are you. Number two, I urge people to start researching and doing the reconnaissance of who are age inclusive, age pro, age positive orgs and certainly leaders. So you're going to have to go do some searching, researching, reconnaissance, networking. You might have been in a role, Bruce, where you weren't vivacious like you are, or enigmatic, or energetic, or networker.
Never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, cover your ears. This is not for you, Bruce. But for many people, they're used to sort of that role they had where it might have been back office. It might have been not with a lot of people. Maybe you worked with 4 people for 10 years. You got to get out of that comfort zone and be ready to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, pushing yourself into these other realms. And then thirdly, this is kind of the most important one, I think, Bruce, is that each of us, regardless of who you are, an engineer, a health practitioner, a nurse, an architect, whatever it is, you have transferable skills. And if you think that you're just going to keep applying to be the engineer again because you were an engineer for 25 years, doesn't mean that you can't be something 180 different, because you have these leadership, transferable, organizational, people, operational skills. They can be applied somewhere else. So stop being so myopic. Get your head out of the sand and stop thinking you're going to have to be in your previous profession going forward.
What's the call to action in terms of technology? Because I notice a real spectrum of people of all ages, but mostly people who are over the age of 50, who sometimes have a reticence to using Google Docs and AI and don't have the facility or mastery with engaging on things that someone who's 30 and is a digital native doesn't even think about. What's our responsibility as people who are happily north of 50 to make sure we stay current?
What's the technical term? Get over it?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's the technical term.
Put your big girl, big boy pants on. You've gotten to this point in life because of aptitude. So you have been able to figure things out at work when the curveballs came during the 2008 fiscal crisis, the dot-com weirdness of the 2001, 2002 era. You survived potentially, right, the 1986, 87 meltdown, and when interest rates were 26% and your house was like $8,000 a month mortgage. You've weathered some of these storms already. And so you just need to look in the mirror and say, okay, wait a second. It's just tech. It's AI. I could figure out Claude Cowork or Claude Design. It can't be that much. I mean, and then you start challenging yourself and incrementally building upon, again, those transferable skills you already own and say, yeah, gosh darn it, Bruce, I have transferable AI technology skills that I can learn. Why not? So again, when I,
You
by
will
the way,
need to use a different phrase other than "gosh darn it" because that's very Little Rascals, circa 1955, I think.
I was actually going for June Cleaver with Wally on the
Don't
Leo
even know that
DeVever
show.
show.
Don't even know
Yeah.
that show. I want to come back to the organizational question. So, as a CEO, I run an organization, and one of the things that all leaders need to be thinking about is cost. How do
Mm.
you think about the 50-year-old with 30 years of work experience and the reality that they likely cost more than a 30-year-old with 5 years work experience?
Okay, two things have to happen. So there's the organization and there's the individual side. So I can give you a couple examples. So in Germany, BMW took a look at their workforce demography and they're like, huh, we've got a lot of older people, not a lot of middle aged or younger people, certainly. So might we figure out a way in which to help our organization longer term? They introduced something called the Senior Expert Program. And the Senior Expert Program allows those that are of a certain vintage, it's not a certain year, it's just more like whatever, rocks or ruby level. And they ask them, or they can volunteer themselves to say, hey, do you want to maybe give up that director role or VP role? And you know what? Like, we'd love you to hang around here. Maybe not at that same level of salary, but you can be an individual contributor. But we want you to be here because we want you to be here longer because you have such wisdom and expertise and all, where the bodies are buried, so to say. And so each year, BMW is offering and people are put in the hands of volunteer wise say, I want to be on the senior expert program. And so they've relinquished their leadership responsibilities from a team organizational perspective and become ICs, individual contributors. There's a different way to look at it. There's a car company saying, we have a demography opportunity / problem. What might we do differently? So you, the individual, which is where I'm going with, you in your mindset have to both prepare in your 30s, 40s, and 50s for that financial potential inevitability that you might not be making the 80, 180, 380K, whatever your number is, and saying, so if there's a way in which for me to do this differently, could I? So that's number one. Number two, Unilever. Oh my gosh, they have this thing called U-Work. And so what they allow the rocks and the rubies to do is to have a side hustle. So not only do you get to keep your job and or you can move into, again, kind of like BMW, a different type of arrangement where you're maybe 80% of the time, 60% of the time, and they allow you to side hustle. As long as it's not Unilever competitor basis, you're allowed to go out and do things. And they want you to do that. They encourage you through the U-Work program in which to do that. So BMW, Unilever are two really bright, shining examples for me where both the individual has to look at themselves differently and the organization supports it.
I love both those examples, but it still doesn't get to my question of cost. You're looking at the P&L. A person who's 50 with 30 years simply costs more.
Yeah. Which is, again, back to, I guess, those examples. I wasn't really as illustrative as I could have been, Bruce. So I'm sorry. You can edit this, right?
No.
So, I'm kidding. So what the organization can do, right, is basically say, so what's our, what I call team norm or org norm? So from a cost perspective, if they're older, what's happening right now, Bruce? There's only one playbook. And that playbook offer is what? Whack the most expensive older people. Like get them up 100%. And so I
think I was more thinking about hiring. So you've got this great roster of candidates. There's lots of awesome candidates.
Yeah.
And the salary expectation for a 50-year-old is probably going to be higher than for a 30-year-old. Not to a person, but that it's not a surprise that would be a reality.
Which then you start offering things like U-Work, but in a different way. You could offer the 4-day work week. You could offer, 32-hour gig at this rate. And then you say, hey, Bruce, why don't you go work your other 8 hours on Fridays or Mondays somewhere else and sort of make up that difference should you so be needing it. That's the creativity that people in culture and HR executives aren't yet there, certainly in Canada. And I'm pushing, hopefully, them to kind of rethink the way in which they do that operating cost model.
One last question. You and I have both been around a while. I've been focused on DEI for decades. Back in my corporate life, I led all the training, developed all the training, did all the things. How do you recommend people of a certain age address some of the tangible or intangible ageism that they see in their workplace?
we got another 20 minutes, right?
Yeah,
It's
we
a
do.
long
About
file.
30
Yeah.
seconds, but
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, it has to be part of an operating culture's who are we? Are you age inclusive, age pro, age positive, or not? Just like EDI, why is age not part of that portfolio? For example, if we in our organizations we're looking at composition, as we should, of board level, leadership levels,
yeah,
of BIPOC, of men versus women, et cetera, don't you think maybe the whole
yeah,
organization should also add age to the entire EDI
sure.
portfolio? This is where I don't understand. It is sort of ageism and its practices are the last ism to be conquered, yet we sort of know it's happening, and HRPNC and the ELT or the ECs have, or the EXCOs have not put this on the dial. I don't understand why it needs to be an integral part of that EDI, portfolio, Bruce.
And we tolerate the digs around age in a way that we would simply not tolerate them around sexual orientation today.
Well, exactly. So some memes and tropes for you, right? So we call millennials the folks that are always worried that there's not enough avocado toast at the restaurant,
Right.
and they carry 6 water bottles the size of Stanley Cups from meeting to meeting. Like that's a
Yes.
terrible trope.
Yeah.
Or boomers whom somehow love to put 28 emojis in a single text message.
Right.
Like those are terrible. And if we're doing that in the org place and becomes normal, then those norms are something we need to create differently.
Very interesting stuff. Well, I mean, we really could go for another couple of hours to talk about the issues of substance and also about your book. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Uncle Bruce.
I like being Uncle Bruce. Dan Pontefract is an author. He is a speaker. He is a leadership and culture strategist. And his book is called The Future of Work is Gray, The Untapped Value of Age in the Workforce.